Thank you for joining us today for our resume building workshop with Jim Scott from PeopleReady. PeopleReady is one of the sponsors for the Construction Industry Education Foundation's Design Build competition. On the right, you'll notice that there's an option to either raise your hand or type into the chat box if you have questions during the presentation. And then at the end of the webinar, we'll go ahead and we'll read off and answer all those questions. If you have any general questions about the competition at all, please send those to jblair, B-L-A-I-R, at cie.foundation. And again, all the information is online at designbuildcompetition.com. So again, we're going to go ahead and start right now with Jim Scott from PeopleReady on today's resume webinar. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jordan. Hello, everyone. Glad to be here with you today. My name is Jim Scott. I'm a trade recruiter with PeopleReady Skilled Trades, and I'm excited to speak with you all about building resumes. But before I get into that, I do want to offer just a quick company plug, tell you a little bit about who I am and what I do. I work with PeopleReady Skilled Trades. We're a company that was founded in 1987. We've got hundreds of offices across the country. And what we operate to do is to try and connect people with skilled trades jobs. Here in the Bay Area, we work with carpenters, electricians, plumbers, laborers, you name it, we're probably doing it at some point in time in construction. Our work is very flexible. There's a wide variety of work. We're trying to create opportunity for all of the skilled trades people that we work with. So why do people want to work with us? Again, flexibility. With us, you work when you want to work. The variety of work that we offer. We're hoping to create opportunities for folks to learn and build their skills. We are your safety advocate when you're on one of our job sites. We offer reliable pay once a week by check or direct deposit. We offer access to benefits. We have a large network of contractors, and we're always here. As I'd mentioned, we've been here in the Bay Area for more than 30 years, and we intend to stay here for a long time and continue working with the skilled trades people that do such important work in our communities. So let's talk about resumes. I think that's what you came here for. But first, what is a resume? Resume is a brief written account of a personal, educational, and professional qualifications and experience as that prepared by an applicant for a job. So many of you have probably heard of resumes before. Maybe some of you have written them before. There's a lot of different ideas of what the right resume is, and I want to offer you my idea of what I'm generally looking for. But the truth is, there's a lot of great resources out there, and you may meet other people that have experience doing it, and it's good to kind of shop around and find out about what's going to work for you. But what actually looking for when they receive a resume? So I'm a recruiter. I read hundreds of resumes a week. I'm constantly looking to find out about what someone's done and whether or not they're going to be a fit for the work that I do. So it really helps to have an understanding of what I, as an employer, might be looking for if you were to send me your resume. So I talk about my brutally honest resume review process. It takes me about 3 times of reading before I have all the information. There's the first glance, the first time I'm looking at your resume. There's a second read through where I'm looking for more information. And the third time when I'm actually looking at the fine details of your resume. And we like to emphasize the fact that you only have one chance to make a first impression when it comes to your resume. So it's important to kind of set things up so that the first time I'm looking at it, I get hooked right from the get-go. So that first impression, this is the first time the resume pops up on my screen or I have it in my hand. What am I looking for? The first thing is I'm looking at a lot of format stuff. So I want to see, are things cluttered versus is there lots of white space, or are things organized in a way that it's easy for me to figure out where things are and where I can find the information? Are things condensed and summarized, or are there very long paragraphs that I'm going to have to read through? I'm looking for general aesthetics, again, format, but also font. Is the font something that's clear and simple to read? Punctuation. Are punctuation in the places that I would expect them to be, and is it correct? And other things like that. I'm also looking at the length of the resume. As a general rule, you want your resume to be 1 page long, no longer. It's okay if it's a little bit shorter than 1 full page, but definitely no longer than 1 page if you can avoid it. I'm looking for typos. Typos communicate to me about someone's attention to detail. So I'm looking to see if there's anything in there that I can learn about them in that respect. I'm also looking for things that shouldn't be there. Again, things that might tell me a little bit about their attention to detail and what that tells me about them. And we'll get a little bit more into what shouldn't be on a resume later. My second scan, I'm looking for keywords that apply to my industry. So in my case, I'm typically hiring skilled tradespeople. So I'm looking for words like carpentry or construction. I might be looking for things a little bit more detailed, like if I'm looking at a resume for an electrician, I might be looking for conduit bending or troubleshooting and things like that. So words that tell me that this is a person who might have really done this work. I'm looking for positions and job titles or maybe company names. Obviously, if your job title applies to the work that I'm doing, that's a good indication. And if you've worked for a company that maybe I'm familiar with or I've heard of in my area, that can also tell me a little bit about who you are and what you've done. I'm also looking for job duration. I really want to know, are you staying at places and working with them for a long time? Or are you jumping around from job to job? Because that tells me a little bit about what you're looking for, but also about what your work history might have been. I'm also looking for what contact information is provided. Ideally, I want to see at the very least a phone number and an email address. Any less than that, and it becomes very difficult for me to get in touch with someone. I'm also looking for overall time and gaps in employment. Gaps in employment aren't necessarily a problem. There's reasons people are out of work that are perfectly reasonable. But again, it might tell me something about this person and what I need to know as an employer. The third read through, and here's where I'm looking for real details. This read through involves the most concentrated effort on my part. I'm looking for achievements versus job duties. So that difference can be a little bit subtle. A job duty is a thing that is in your job description. It's something you're supposed to do every day. An achievement is what you've actually done on a job. And it may be more detailed or maybe something that was a little bit outside of your job description, but it's something you've actually accomplished and can tell me a little bit more about who you were on a job. I am looking for details on grammar. Is your grammar accurate? Is it, again, telling me that you're paying attention to things like that? I'm looking for sentences that never end. I really don't want to see run-on sentences. If they run on and on and on, it's hard for me to read. And it's also kind of an issue about attention to detail again. I'm looking for consistency, meaning is the format consistent? And also is the time that you've been working consistent? The other issue is that if it's too long, I'm probably not going to read it all. So as I mentioned before, your resume should usually be about 1 page long. If you hand me a resume that's 3 pages and I have to get through 15 to 20 resumes that day, I may not read past the first page. So again, reasons that it's important to keep the length of your resume in mind. Once I have your resume in my hand, I might want to talk to you. And it's important to me, I know that you're more than just a piece of paper, and I'm going to ask questions that I may already know the answers to. And I'm looking for consistency and honesty. And people get information wrong all the time. And so I'm looking again to see like if what I'm seeing on your resume matches what you're going to tell me. So that's, again, thinking about when you hand someone your resume, you want to do that, thinking about the fact that hopefully they're going to call you to talk to you about it, and you need to be prepared to talk about what you've put on your resume. So let's check out some examples. I think it's helpful to look at what resumes might actually look like. So I'm going to jump out of my presentation here real quickly and show you a couple of resume examples that I have created. And I should say these resume examples are based loosely off of resumes that I have used myself to get jobs. So I can attest to their efficacy. This first one is what we call a skills-based resume. And I know that a lot of the folks that are participating in this competition are young folks, high school age, who may not have had job experience before. And this particular resume might be a really good option for you because, again, it focuses on skills that you may already have and are ready to bring with you into the workforce, even if you don't already have a lot of job experience. So things you're going to notice here, first of all, right at the top, This person, their name is Alex Applicant, and you can already see their name's very clear. It's up there front and center. I know who has sent me this resume. I know that Alex lives in Oakland, California. I have a phone number for Alex, and I have an email address for Alex, and all of that's clear and easy to see. Right here, Alex has told me a little bit about their education. Alex has a high school diploma, Oakland High School in 2020. So my guess is Alex is actually going to graduate next year. Now, Alex is listing some skills here: construction skills, basic construction safety practices, basic wood framing, and listing down different things that Alex knows how to do. Down here, there's professional administrative skills. Alex is a fluent Spanish speaker, has basic knowledge of Microsoft programs and email, knowledge of basic math. All these things are useful skills that may apply to the kind of work that Alex is seeking. Alex has some relevant experience. Alex attended an ABC construction training program. They were an intern from June 2019 to August 2019. And down here is listed a number of things that Alex achieved, including utilizing a variety of construction tools to assemble miniature houses to specifications, maintained a safe and clean work site by organizing tools, removing waste, sweeping, and ensuring materials, and tools were stored properly. So again, looking at these are things that Alex actually did, as opposed to describing them as the expectations that Alex had to meet while in that job, or in this training program, I should say. And down here at the bottom, Alex is listed an award. Alex was on the honor roll at Oakland High School in 2018. So that's a good thing to know. Always nice to know if someone has achieved an award or a certification. You notice this resume doesn't fill up the entire page, and that's okay, because Alex, at this point, doesn't have a whole lot of experience, but has done a great job of listing out basic skills that they can use in a job, and also their relevant experience. Now let's look at a resume that might be more filled out for someone who already has a little bit more experience, or a lot more experience in this case. So we're jumping up. Alex Applicant actually now has a great deal of experience. Alex still listed their name, their location, their phone number, and their email right at the top where you can see it. With education, now Alex has graduated from Oakland High School in 2001. Alex also has an associate degree in construction management from Laney College in 2006. And here, work experience is listed instead of skills, because this is not a skills-based resume. In this case, Alex is going to jump right into experience, and it's going to place that in reverse chronological order, meaning this top job here is Alex's most recent job. So you can see Alex is a journeyman carpenter from June 2012 to February 2020 with ABC Construction. And looking at that, Alex is listing some of their achievements here. And going down here is listed other jobs that Alex has had, going back to Alex's first job with Bay Area Framers as an apprentice carpenter back in 2004. At the bottom here is listed trainings and special skills, where Alex lists OSHA 10 construction safety training, CPR and first aid training, and also that Alex is a proficient Spanish speaker. And at the bottom here, Alex has also listed awards, just like you saw in the last resume. That Alex was awarded with Employee of the Month with Bay Area Framers in March of 2007, May of 2009, and July of 2010. So what is it about these resumes that's really standing out to me? Why is it that I'm showing them to you as an example here? Go here to this page here. The important parts of a resume. So these, again, are the things that I really need to see on every single resume that comes across my desk. First of all, is that clear name and up-to-date contact information. I need both the person's first and last name. I really want to see all that information, as well as the city that they're from, their phone number, and their email. It's not uncommon that I will get a resume that has an old phone number or an old email address on it. And unfortunately, I've got so many resumes I'm going through in time that I'm probably not going to put a lot of effort into trying to find the right phone number and the right email for that person. Which is sad, because I may really want to hire that person and I don't know it, or that person may really want to have the chance at my job, but because their resume is not up to date with their current contact information, I can't do anything about that. So this is to say, this is something you should always make sure is up to date on your resumes. It's very important. Next, we've got clear information about educational background. I'm looking for degree achieved or pursued, institution or school, and dates achieved or expected. So again, Your degree can be a high school diploma. The institution is the school you're attending high school at, and the dates achieved or expected is either the date you graduated or the date you expected to graduate. If you're giving me a skills-based resume, I'm looking for clear information about professional skills. If you're not sure about what to put in this section, think about the job you're applying for. And does that skill apply to the job? In general, you want to try and customize your resume for the job that you're applying to. So again, if you know you're applying for a construction job, it's important to think about the construction skills you have. Just like if you're going to apply to a job in the medical industry, you want to think about skills you have that might apply to medical work. Professional experience listed in reverse chronological order. So in this case, if you actually have had a job or a position like a job, I want to see at the very top the last job you had and work your way back in time from there. I want to see the job title. I want to know the company and organization you work for. I want to know the dates where you're employed. And these don't have to be down to the exact day. It's really helpful to know at least the month and the year you were employed. And I also want to know the relevant achievements. What did you actually accomplish at that job, as opposed to just what were your job duties? And I keep talking about relevant achievements versus job duties. The other important thing about achievements is that the achievements are where you tell me what you're really capable of and how your experience might help my business progress, as opposed to your job duties, which doesn't tell me a whole lot. It tells me about what you are expected to do at a job, but not necessarily about how you're going to help me with my work. And here I've also mentioned internships and volunteer work can potentially be listed as professional experience. A lot of internships and even volunteer work have evaluation processes in them. You may have had a supervisor when you were an intern or a volunteer, and you may have had duties and things you were expected to accomplish. Those are all hallmarks of jobs, and you can list them on your resume as such. It can be useful to have a section about certifications and awards. And the reason I mention that is that stuff doesn't always fit really nicely into a list of achievements at a job, but it may still be good for indicating to someone the professional skills you bring. And so it's good to have that section at the bottom to say, I have my certification in such and such a kind of work, or I received this award for being a good student, or for my abilities for being a good employee, whatever the award might be. So what do you think might be some good practices for resume writing? Here are the things I think you should do. Pay attention to aesthetics. Pay attention to how things look. You want to make sure it's easy to read. Make sure that the format is consistent. It's really important to make sure that the margins are in the same place. If you have bullet points listing out your work, you want all of those bullet points to line up in the same spot throughout the resume. You want to make sure that when a heading of a job is bolded, then the heading on every job should be bolded. That's what I mean by making sure your format is consistent. Utilize white space. So white space can be a really good way for framing the information in a way that's easy for me to read. If you fill up every last inch of space on your resume, it's actually very difficult for me to read. So make sure that you're leaving enough room around the various sections of your resume so that it's easy for my eye to navigate it. Get at least a second pair of eyes to review it. Resume writing is hard. It takes time, and it can get really exhausting to the point where it's easy to miss things. If you've ever had to write a resume or a paper for class, it's kind of the same thing. It can make a big difference to be able to hand it to somebody else and ask them to read it. And they may find errors that you weren't catching before. They may also find things that you might be able to change the way you word it and can improve the way you're writing something. Especially if it's someone who's already familiar with your work experience, they may really be able to help flesh out a particular part of your resume that you're having trouble writing. So definitely get at least one other person to read your resume while you're writing. Take a break from resume writing and come back to it. Again, sometimes it doesn't work to do this all at once, and make a good pass at it, and then maybe take a short break, do something else, let your mind wander away from resume writing, and then sit back, take another look at it, and try to see if maybe you've had a little bit of time, you can write something else and bring it to the next level that you want it to be at. Be aware of autocorrect typos that don't highlight. We all use word processors for writing our resumes, and it can be a real trick sometimes that there's words that are the same, they sound the same, but they're spelled differently and they may mean different things. And autocorrect doesn't always catch that stuff. So you want to read very carefully to make sure that you have the right to and tos, or the right there, and there's on there, that kind of thing. Review your resume before you send it. Anytime you're going to send that resume out, you want to read it again before you click send. Make sure you're sending the resume that you want to, that it's got your up-to-date contact information, all of those things. Make sure it's really ready to go out, because once it's out, you can't rewrite it. Do brag about yourself. I want to know about your achievements, not just your job duties. This is your time to shine. You're trying to get an employer's attention. So be proud of the things that you've done and show that to me on your resume. Use action words. So what I mean by that is, when you're listing out your achievements, you don't want to just say mop the floors. You want to say met job duties and expectations by cleaning and attending, that's not a great example, but the issue is that by meeting job expectations, meeting is the action word. If you're using tools, you want to say utilizing tools on a daily basis to get the job done. Utilizing is the action words. If you're responsible for making sure that something is maintained over time, maintained facilities at this location. Maintained is the action word. So again, that's talking about the things that you did as opposed to something you were expected of. If you can, email your resume as a PDF. Obviously, you're going to use it as in document format for you to edit it and things like that. But when you're actually sending it out, you want to send it as a PDF, because the vast majority of people reviewing resumes have the ability to read a PDF. It comes as the same format no matter where you send it in that case. Whereas there can be issues if you're writing it in Microsoft Word, but the person reading your resumes doesn't have that program. Maybe they're using Google Docs. There's formatting issues that can come up when they open it in a different program. It's especially bad if you're going from Google Docs into Microsoft Word. And both of those programs, and pretty much any other word processor out there, is going to have the ability to save as a PDF. The other thing that's good is PDFs are harder to modify. And so once you send it out, it really is, it's going to stay the way you intended it to be. You want to be honest and don't over exaggerate. So as I said before, it's good to brag about yourself. Talk about the things you actually did, but you don't want to embellish. You don't want to exaggerate. And the reason is that everything on your resume comes down to things that people may want to find out more about. They want to ask you about it later on. And if they find out that you're claiming you're doing more than you actually can, that can be a problem and can be an automatic disqualifier for jobs. So you really, really want to make sure that you can back up the claims that you're making. You want to customize your resume for the job for which you are applying. So if I'm applying for a job as a carpenter, my resume is going to look one way. On the other hand, if I'm applying for a job as a teacher, I'm going to want to make sure that the things on my resume indicate what in my experience makes me a good teacher. There may be things from my other careers in the past that help with that, and they can be on there, but you want to make sure that it's there. And so I mentioned here that it's good to keep a living version of your resume with every position you've ever held, so that when it's time to hunt for jobs, all you have to do is delete non-applicable work and make minor changes, rather than rewriting your resume over and over. So what I mean by this is in my computer, I have a version of my resume that has every job I've had going back to when I was 16 years old. And if I find myself applying for jobs, I start with that document. And what I can go into is I just delete the jobs that are either too old and things that just no one needs to know about the work I was doing 20 years ago. Or maybe it's work that just really isn't applicable to the job that I'm applying for, and I can take that off as well. And then I can go into the other things and make minor changes here and there to make sure that things are presented the way that I really want them to. But the reason I do that is it saves me a lot of time, as opposed to if every time I was looking for a job, I had to start from scratch and rewrite my resume over again. That would be a nightmare. So I just recommend you, especially if you're writing your first resume now, this is a great time to get started with that. Hold on to the document, and you can just build on it over time, and it'll continue to be useful to you. If you do send your resume into somebody and you haven't heard back from them, follow up a couple days after submitting it. It could be something just as simple as sending an email of, thank you very much for your consideration. I'm very eager to talk with you about the job and available to talk as soon as you're ready. And here's my phone number. It's a great way of indicating to an employer that you're excited, that you really are eager to work with them, and that you are thinking about them more as just another resume you're sending out. And it can help you stand out. You definitely don't want to get into the practice of nagging people and going, sending out emails every day and calling, and you want to be patient, but it's not a bad thing to send out a note a couple days later just saying, hey, I'm still interested and I want to know what's going on. Your resume should prompt interest. So again, you want to think about that, like your resume should get folks interested in what you're doing. What might be some things to avoid doing when writing a resume? Don't forget to put your up-to-date contact information. I'm going to harp on that a lot. It's really, really important to make sure your contact information is up to date. So don't forget to check that every time you send it out. Don't put your picture on your resume. Your picture is not relevant to the work that you're seeking, and it's not something the job seeker needs to have on there. And unfortunately, there are circumstances where employers may discriminate based off what they see at a picture, and it's just better not to put your picture on there so you avoid an issue like that. Do not include your social security number or other sensitive personal information. Resumes can go all over the place once you've sent them out. I have sent my resumes to jobs that then sent them to 10 other employers they knew. Sometimes we're posting our resume onto databases like job seeking databases online to help us find work, and your resume is there and available to anybody who can get into that database. So it's really important. Don't include things like your social security number or your driver's license number or your birth date, things like that, that could become a problem if that information gets into the wrong hands. Do not use run-on sentences. You want your sentences to be brief and concise. Make sure that it's easy for the person to read and it doesn't just go on and on and on. Don't make your resume too short or too long. And again, if this is your first resume, a short resume is fine, provided it has all the information an employer needs to see. On the other hand, there's pretty much never a good reason to have your resume be too long. One page is good. Do not list only job duties. So again, you want to make sure you're getting those achievements, the things you actually accomplished at your job. Don't forget to proofread your name, email, phone, and all of the other information that's on that resume. And again, as I mentioned before, it's good to get even another person to help proofread it too. Also, don't assume the gender of the hiring manager. Lots of people are hiring for lots of jobs. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten a resume or a cover letter that starts with "Dear Sir." I've never met this person, and while that might be correct for me, that person didn't know that, and it might not be the right first impression to make with a hiring manager that doesn't want that pronoun. So don't assume the gender of the hiring manager. So I'm open to questions if folks have them. That's my brief how-to on writing resumes.
Great, thank you, Jim. We do have a handful of questions that came in. So the first one says, I am a sophomore and I don't have any job experience yet. Can I count any of the clubs or sports or other activities that I've done at school on my resume right now?
It is possible, I'd say. I think the thing you'd want to think about is, again, applying the same ideas to all of those organizations. What was your role? And not just what did you do, like not just what was that club intended to do, but when you were participating in that club, what did you accomplish? Similarly, if you're talking about a sports team that you were a member of, it's good to mention those things, though a lot of those things might also, in a skills-based resume, that might be relevant experience, or they might be things you draw relevant skills from. But I hope that answers your question.
Great. We received another question. Should I put an objective or mission statement at the top of my resume?
So you'll see a lot of examples that include those. And while it's not necessarily a deal breaker, I have never received a resume where I felt like the difference that was made was in the objective or the mission statement. And so often objectives and mission statements come down to things like, I'm looking to become a competitive component of your team, which is a fancy way of saying I want a job. And if you're sending me your resume, I know that. So in general, I discourage it because it's taking up valuable space on your resume that you could be putting in with more relevant information. That being said, if you feel like it makes your resume look better and you feel more confident sending it out, then you can have it there. It's not necessarily a wrong answer, but I would say it's not necessary.
Great. We received another question. I have a friend who has a resume that shows that they're 98% proficient in CAD. Do you see value in adding that detail of proficiency, or should it be listed in another way?
I don't think that the level of detail in proficiency is necessarily like saying that you're 98% proficient in something. I'm not sure that that's super important, as opposed to being able to say just that you're proficient in a particular skill. That can be, basically, if you're going to include it in your resume, you should assume it's something you are proficient at, and it's fine to say that. Later on down the line, when you get into interviews and that process, the employer may want to get more details about the depth of your proficiency. But I don't think it's super important that you have that kind of detail in your resume.
Great. And last call for questions, but otherwise this looks like our final one. Do you have any suggestions for follow-up when you're submitting online and you don't know who you are submitting to?
Good question. Well, there's a couple things you can do. Some of that will depend a little bit on the size of the organization. If you're ever applying for any job, it's good to spend a little time looking around the website for that company. And particularly smaller companies will often have, under their about tab on their website, may have information about who works there, and you could find out a little bit that way. The other thing that you can do is if all they have is generic contact information, it's fine always to send something in, and you can always use the heading "to whom it may concern." It's a very useful way of sending something in a professional way that doesn't necessarily indicate a particular person. And whomever is going to be receiving those emails will hopefully be able to direct it to the right person in that case. But again, important things to keep in mind if you don't know who you're sending it to is to avoid assumptions about who that person might be. So again, don't make assumptions about their gender, don't necessarily make assumptions about their age or their job title or things like that, and just try and keep it simple, and suggest that you're trying to get in touch with someone, and that you're interested in following up about your application, and that you're available to talk. And that's always a good time to reiterate your contact information. But again, keep it short and sweet, and hopefully you'll hear back from them.
Great. And I believe this is our final question, but how should I well, let's see, what does this say? Who should I consider listing as references when asked?
So that's a good question. I don't recommend putting your references on your resume ever. So I want to be clear about that part in case you were thinking of putting your references on your resume. It's fine to leave a line that says references available upon request or something like that. But the reason that I say don't put it on your resume is that your references need, just like your resume should be customized for the job that you're applying to, your references should be customized to the job that you're applying to. Meaning, if you are invited to submit references, you want to make sure that you are sending information about folks that can talk about your experience that applies to the job you're applying for. So again, if you're applying for a job in construction work and you have construction experience, you want to make sure your references are people who've actually seen you do that work. Ideally, you want someone to be your most recent supervisor, if you can, or again, other people who've actually been on the job with you. If you are someone who does not have job experience yet, then what you would be sending is kind of a good personal reference. And good personal references in some cases might be a teacher. They might be, if you have a guidance counselor at your school, they might be able to be helpful with that. Again, if you're part of any clubs or organizations outside of school, you know, an adult leader at those schools might be a good person to be a reference in that case. And the other thing about sending reference information that's really important, and the reason you don't put it right on the resume, is you want to let the like if you're sending someone's information out as a reference, it's really important to call that person and get in touch with them and say, hey, I'd like to send your information out as a reference for this job, and talk with them about that first. Because first of all, you want to make sure they're okay with that, and that they're okay with being a reference for you. It's also good to give them an idea of the job you're applying for, so they're prepared to speak about it and they're already thinking about how their experience with you might apply to this other work. And then the other issue too is, especially in the day and age where so many of us get phone number, you know, we get phone calls and we look at the number and it's a number we don't recognize. And if we aren't expecting unsolicited phone calls, we might just ignore them because we don't want to deal with another robocall. On the other hand, if someone tells me that they need to use me as a reference, I might be more inclined to pick that call up in case it's the person that's calling for a reference, because I really want to respond quickly and support the person who's asked me to provide a reference. But again, I would only do that if the person had told me, hey, I'm applying for a job and I'd like to use you as a reference, and we've had that conversation.
Great. It looks like we are all finished with questions. So again, thank you very much, Jim, for this webinar today. A reminder to those who are on the line that this is a recorded webinar and will be available on our website at designbuildcompetition.com. For any other questions about the competition, please reference that website, and there is contact information on there as well. Again, thank you again so much, Jim, and thank you to PeopleReady.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.